Hello, Intertubes. I'm Chuck.
And I'm Gabs.
And we're talking a little bit ago about this lady at church that, well, she was at the church. She wasn't part of it because we invited her to come. And the kind of church that we go to does not do communion every week. It's one of those that does it every 8 weeks or so. We'll just say every 8 weeks. And on this particular Sunday, it was not on the 8th week. And so during the service, the older lady was here, I was here, and Gabby was here. And I could feel the tension, almost physically, like when she started to realize that they're not going to do communion. This is not right. She wasn't doing those movements. I could tell, oh, she's upset. I'm going to hear about it. And when the man up front, not the pastor, said, all right, thank you for coming. We'll see you next week. This is a large church, about, I'd say, 1,000 people.
Probably.
For each of the two services. She was like, they're not going to do communion? I said, no, we don't do it every week. And I heard her go, oh. So we walked out to the atrium area, and we were talking, and she asked me, so why don't they do communion every week? I said something like, well, actually, because communion stems from the Passover meal. And I think I stopped, or I was frozen, something like, it actually comes from the Passover meal. And I was going to continue, but I was quickly cut off. And now, this is the part where we get Gabby's perception. You were standing like 20 feet away or so, and what did you hear?
I heard very loud yelling.
And people that were several thousand yards, give or take, away in the church. They could hear. Several of the church leaders, our friends, the pastor, his wife, they could hear this woman, ah, that's Jewish! Ah. And you were with your friend talking, and she said something?
Yeah, she said something like, do you know that lady? And I said, yes. And she goes, I'm so sorry.
Alright, so that's the story of that. And we were, like I said, we were talking just now, and you said something about people that do, or that think we should do communion every week. What was your thought behind that?
That people just turn it into like a checklist item, and it becomes just sort of part of the routine, like when you go to church and there's the offering and stuff like that, and it just becomes like another part of the service, so it loses its intended meaning because people do it over and over, so they don't think about what it really means.
Yeah. And you said this lady's philosophy was what exactly? She didn't see communion as important, but just something you had to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the checklist you just mentioned. So we thought, well, people claim it's in Scripture that you're supposed to do it every week, even though it comes from Passover, which was annual. Where is that verse? Let me see. Where is it? It's in the book of Acts, 2:26. Actually, starting in, did I say 26?
Yes.
2:46.
That too.
But starting in verse 42, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, they as in the believers, to the teaching and fellowship, to the breaking of bread, and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. Okay, so people, this is what we were talking about. People seem to think that breaking bread is synonymous with communion, but as you can tell by her beautiful eyes, she's not completely American. Where's your family come from?
My mom comes from Lebanon, which is in the Middle East, and in that culture, when they say breaking bread, they really just mean a meal. And bread is a part of almost every meal in that culture.
Breakfast, lunch, dinner, midnight snack.
Yeah.
Yeah. The breaking bread, it just means they had a meal together every day. I mean, can you imagine having the like Passover communion celebration every single day? Yeah, that'd get a little old and meaningless. And in conclusion, to demonstrate the ridiculousness of man-made traditions, there was this little church. They're very traditional, like you might say conservative. So this particular old church, traditional, they had a cloth over their communion table, and they had the like communion cup dish and then the little bread dish, and they had this lace cloth over it, and the people, very solemn, came up, raised the cloth, folded it with reverence equal only to the American flag folding. And the people in the congregation audience were just sitting there, or whatever. But I guess there was some kind of skeptic or someone who was just like, what's going on here? Where does this come from with the cloth folding? Several decades before, like in the 1920s, before they had like air conditioning or anything like that, I guess air filtration, flies would come in and they would see the bread and the grape juice. I don't know if Welch was around yet. And the flies would feast on that. So they, we want to keep this stuff clean, so they put a cloth over it. And next time they did communion, well, obviously have to take the cloth off. And so then it became a ceremony, and that cloth removal and folding ceremony became more important than the actual communion service. Man-made traditions. It's kind of like the Pharisees, coming up with laws around the laws of God. I don't suppose it's a contest, but just in the comments, let us know what kind of weird things you've seen in the church that you think that doesn't sound very scriptural. And we'd love to hear from you. Now, what is it you want our people to do?
If you thought this video was interesting, click like, give it a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button so so you can see videos that we post, and hit the little bell so that you are notified, because YouTube likes to not always notify people. But that way you won't miss any videos.
All right. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.